All right, hello guys, and welcome back to the podcast. Today we have a really special guest. We've got John McEntire joining us today. John, I am really excited. So happy that you joined us today. If you would just give us a brief introduction and let us know who you are, what you do.
Yeah, so what made me what I'm able to do right now started when I was young. I grew up at a house where we had people from all over the world at our dinner table constantly. I traveled to 19 countries, 50 states, and 8 provinces and territories in Canada by the age of 22. And I was also in theater from age 9 to 19. And all these activities gave me a very different idea of what, first of all, community is with the theater and how community works. And it's not just the stars on the marquee that make the show. It's everybody has a piece of that puzzle. The parts in regards to learning about cultures, I realized from a very young age that my perspective of the world is my perspective of the world. It's not how everybody else thinks. And so I really gained an understanding in regards to how to bring people together. And so throughout 35 years of corporate life, I've worked, around the world, and I've always had to put teams together. I've had to put innovation ecosystems together. An innovation ecosystem is basically putting all the parts together to put a company together and get the people moving in the right direction. So I was dealing with the technology. I had to find a person to give that technology to or license it to, and then help them along the way in regards to sometimes creating a startup or sometimes just doing a licensing activity. In pulling those things together, you have to pull these different diverse groups together who have different ways of thinking and different motivation. My company's name is Mutual Prosperity, and that's for a reason, because these types of activities, we need to make sure that there's not one side winning and another side losing. It's got to be a give and take, and it's got to be something where we put those pieces together to make that puzzle look really good and help everybody can thrive.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I share a kindred spirit there with you in the background in theater, because I was in theater as well. I was a child actor, so I feel
Awesome.
like I also use a lot of that training, in sales and kind of being more of a people person, and also connecting with people, right, on a deeper level. So that's really awesome. And I mean, just diving right into there, you have a very impressive resume. I see that you've branded this philosophy or this method called the Sync method, right? SYNC. And just curious, did a little bit of research on it, but was curious, if you could kind of go into that, and then how you're using that to keep teams aligned. And as a on a personal note, me and Sean work for a startup. You're familiar with startups. Maybe you're advising a lot of startups. So how does this method really kind of apply to those remote workers, those remote teams? Our team is all over the world. We're global. We're here in the U.S. We're in India and in Europe, Asia. So just how would you apply this method, this sync method, to this kind of on this work from home on a global scale?
Sure.
Yep.
Thanks for the question. Very good question. So sync is the method, SYNC, as you said. And what that stands for is synchronize yourself naturally within your community. It's about finding your authentic leadership rhythm and not copying someone else's techniques. It's really trying to work. So with the remote work, this becomes an even more critical piece, because everything needs to be fluid. When you've got remote work, especially if people are international and you've got people, on Pacific Coast time, people in India time, people in Japan time, whatever, you need to be able to communicate, but it needs to be in a way that everybody feels like they're being treated as well as others. You don't want one of the groups to ultimately always have the, 2 a.m. shift on the calls and everything. It needs to work with that, having Slack or some type of a tool that keeps you together, that will keep things more, flowing. But communication is really the key to that. You can't rely on, the physical presence to create that alignment. You need to build that alignment by building these relationships in different ways, maybe even having a WhatsApp group to talk about things or whatnot. But um, as we are more virtual, and I think we'll be even becoming more virtual as time goes on because of costs and whatnot, the idea is that we need to make sure that we're all on the same page regarding language. I talk about how we need to break the curse of Babel. And what that is that every part of the organization has their own little language. So people in accounting, speak their language. The C-suite speaks their language. You've got people who are, in sales, they speak a certain language, marketing, HR. Everybody has their own vernacular. They have their own little idioms, and somehow we need to, I put people through a language alignment matrix. And this language alignment matrix allows people to understand the basics of what those words mean. And then people will tend to utilize the words in ways that provide better understanding. So
Mhm.
in a startup activity like you're doing and like I've been involved with myself, when you're growing from, 2 to 5, it's not a big deal because you can distribute those meanings, as easily and everything. But as you go from like 5 to 10 or 10 to 100, all of a sudden things become more problematic. And that's where you need to make sure that you're speaking the same language, you're all on the same vision and mission. And it's those types of tools that you need to be able to pull those together.
Absolutely.
Hey, John, that resonates really deeply with me. I have experience in operations, and I was part of a team where we were working between 4 different time zones. We had Ireland, Hyderabad, and I believe the last one was Singapore.
Wow.
And it was quite challenging at first to find that sync where we could have that communication. And it took us a while to form that bridge where we could then effectively communicate, but it did take some time. And this method sure would have been helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's sometimes we don't know what we don't know. Oftentimes, especially the founders, they get overwhelmed. They have things flowing to a certain point while it's in this smaller growth mode. But once it goes into scaling mode, then all of a sudden the pieces on the chessboard are changing and the way you have to go about things change. And it means that the people with the vision have to be getting that vision and mission into each of the person's heads as good as possible, and then allow them to. So I talk about the pieces of the puzzle, and so everybody is a piece of the puzzle of life, but they're also the piece of the puzzle of that organization, that company. And leaders need to provide margin around that piece of the puzzle, because if they only provide the piece of the puzzle they were thinking that needs to be done by that position, then that person is going to ultimately leave once they've mastered that or they feel like it's boring. And so if you give them the margin around that piece, then they're able to grow into it. And then the dovetails with all the other players. And as everybody syncs together, then it's able to move forward in a much more beneficial manner.
Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious because, having experiences in all these different places, locations, geographically, this, have you seen a difference in how teams approach these synergies, like from, maybe the Eastern, does the Eastern philosophies kind of come into play for, colleagues on one side of the aisle, and then, us over here on the US kind of have a different way of doing things, and kind of having to find, the best way to approach working together, with such different philosophies. It seems like, it's a challenge that, quite a few people see. I had some time at Siemens, and I find Germans to be very, very fun. They shoot from the hip. They're very forward.
Yeah.
They're very outgoing, but sometimes their language can be a bit jarring. So I guess in that sense, like, have you encountered it? I'm sure you have, and like, what are ways that your specific method can kind of address and help teams kind of come together.
Yeah. So you asked about when Eastern philosophies and Western innovation kind of takes hold and such. And what we need to understand is that you're not going to use those tools, in one case, you're going to use those tools together in everything. So it's really creating a lens where you understand where people came from. The reason why Eastern philosophies and Western innovation is an issue is because the Western world, especially the United States, it's got this cowboy mentality, this independence, I can do anything type strut. But that's because of the certain type of style of education that we have, the culture that we live in, the free and easy way of going about things. We have less regulation than a lot of other places do. And so a lot of things can just go through and be done. But when you get into, people who come from, the Middle East or the East, the Far East, you've got people who are educated differently. And basically the education is that you have this master, okay, who is your teacher. He's teaching you, but you treat them as a master in the sense of that they're a guru and you respect them. And so you don't talk back. And um, so a lot of people that I've dealt with in Japan and China and Taiwan and Korea and everything, they tend to be in the background. And I had one of my clients, ask me, I hired three people, one from India, one from Tokyo, and then one from Singapore. And I'm having a hard time getting their attention and getting them to actually feel about what I really need them to do. And they don't ask me questions. And I said, well, that's when I asked him, where did they come from?
Right.
And he told me, I said, oh, that's because of their hierarchy that they learn in school. You
Yep.
never question the master.
Yep.
You respect them. And so the idea is that if we can have these understanding implicitly around the whole group, no matter where they're from, they understand how they normally do things and that they were reared to do things. And then
Right.
the other people, how they're reared to do things. Somehow we need to mesh those styles together and help people understand that. I had a post yesterday on LinkedIn, and it was basically how bringing a global team together. And this is when I was in Doha, had 14 people, 9 different nationalities. And so there was a lot going on and we were underfunded, but we would have these international potlucks and we would all bring food. But as we were talking and everything, we would talk about different topics. And one of the topics we talked about was, what is the difference between an introvert and an extrovert in each of those different cultural contexts? And you get very different answers. So people in the East, they don't like people who are braggadocious. They don't like people who are patting themselves on the back or who are always raising their hand. They like the people who are more demure and who are quiet and have a quiet mode of moving forward. So does that give you an idea as to what the differences are and how we need to pull them together?
Absolutely. I mean, I find that it's kind of like a running joke, maybe not running joke, but we do find that when we, have calls with some of our customers in Japan, just as you alluded to, they they're not keen to ask questions, and it's kind of hard to, kind of figure out where they are because they do tend to be, more reserved. And if you're leading a meeting and, you want engagement and you want people to ask questions and make sure that we're so aligned, they just, they kind of not necessarily refuse to do it, but as you say, it's just a cultural thing, right? And it's them being respectful, and sometimes you kind of have to pry, or you have to, ask open-ended questions and keep asking and making sure that they're understanding what you're saying. Or do they have any questions? Do you agree or do you disagree? Like, it's okay. It's a safe, environment for you to have those, for us to have this conversation. So I completely, agree. And I see exactly what you're saying, daily.
Thank you.
Just a quick question before we move on, Brandon. You mentioned potlucks with a very diverse group. Does that like organically happen, or did you have someone like push the issue of like, hey, let's get together where we can share and get to know one another?
Well, it comes from my always having different people around the dinner table when I was growing up. So that's where the potluck thing came from. So it was really the leader, me, saying, "Hey, let's use this. What do you think about it?" First of all, asking a question. I'm not going to dictate anything. And ultimately, people said, "Oh, that would be great." And then they really relished the fact that, "Oh, I'm going to bring this, from my culture because this is really cool." And so all of a sudden, everybody's proud of something that makes them different and unique. And then we bring it together, and those flavors just enhance the mood and bring everybody together.
That's heartwarming to hear. Any favorite dishes that
Oh
pop
my
out?
gosh, I love food. My wife is like a chef, and so we eat really well. I don't have any real completely. I have certain favorites, here and there, but it's really good food that's well, homegrown is especially good. But
Indeed.
there were so many different flavors on that table that they were all just really delectable.
Good
It's
food, good
awesome.
company.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, pivoting back to your work, and how you advise leaders, and kind of more of a selfish question for me as a sales lead at our company. I'm just curious what advice you would give or recommend to me that it is something that maybe I should be implementing daily to make sure that our sales teams and our business development teams stay aligned, and kind of help them to, or help all of us to stay on the same page and to feel like all of our voices are heard. Like, maybe, just taking a page out of your book, what are, one or two things that I can practice daily to kind of, get those better results?
Yeah, so I think first of all, and I went through this with myself after leaving the corporate world and going into the coaching world, and it was very easy for me to climb up the ladder. I had some childhood trauma stuff that made me a people pleaser and a perfectionist, and so going in the corporate world, all I had to do was figure out what my boss needed and what my boss's boss needed, and then I would figure out how I would get that in a logical and moral way and go forward and do that activity, then I would climb up the ladder. But when I became my own boss, all of a sudden I didn't know who I was reporting to, or if I trusted who I was reporting to, if you will. And so what I've had to do is actually go through and get some of that past garbage out of the way. And so I've had some breakthroughs and everything the last couple of years, which has helped me clear my mind, which has then led me to building intentional presence. So what that means is, take 5 or 10 minutes every morning to clarify your intention for the day. Just really set the stage. Who is it do you want to be? How do you want to show up? And what impact do you want to have? And so it's that presence that the presence that was set, the emotional rhythm for your team, and it keeps you aligned, resilient, and adaptable. So, and you're set for whatever the day is going to throw at you. And so if you can take those little moments and really set the stage, and I would say that would start the day before, plan out your day the day before, then you set your stage with this, 5 to 10 minutes of quiet and thinking about, okay, how I'm going to go forward, and then you go forward. The thing with working with teams and groups is that it all comes from the top. And if the top is sure of themselves and they're vulnerable and they're willing to share the pluses and the minuses, this integrity issue is really an important thing on how to be authentic. And if you're authentic, you're going to have so much more, activity going back and forth. In my book, I talk about how we need to, as leaders, need to inspire, then we need to empower, and then we ultimately all thrive together. And so that's what you do in setting those 5 or 10 minutes in the morning is how am I going to do that today so that tomorrow's even better.
Wow. Yeah, it's awesome and really insightful. And coming to every morning, coming to, or coming into your day with focus and drive and knowing exactly who you are and what you want to do is kind of taking that breath, right? That why am I here today? What is my purpose? Yeah, that's deep and insightful. It gives me a lot to think about. So
No, one more time. It was intentional presence.
Yes, intentional presence.
Thank you.
So whenever you do something, just make it intentional and don't make it an afterthought. It's when we make things an afterthought that things go a little bit haywire. If we're intentional and we do everything the same way, then everything always goes better. If we it's easier to go 100% than it is to go 99%. So whenever you do anything, just do it your best and with the greatest intention. And then with that intentional presence, you're going to get that much more done during the day, and your team's going to see that, and they're going to follow that example.
And I guess something else that you had said kind of stuck with me, and it was the fact that you kind of wanting to be a people pleaser, that coming from your childhood. I guess all of this is, you sound too like you'd be really, really good at sales. Because it's like we do have this kind of urge to want people to like us, right? And I mean you obviously want to do business with somebody that you enjoy and that you like. And I mean, I guess selfishly, there's that part of me, but it's also just naturally kind of who I am. I like to be a people pleaser. I like for people to enjoy to be around me. But showing up with purpose and understanding that there's a goal that we need to do today, there's something that we need to get to, and being the person who shows up and kind of leads this. I want other people to look at me as well and say, well, he's leading this really well. We understand exactly what his expectations are. We know that he's got our best interest at heart, and he's going to do all he can to make sure that we succeed. And I think that's something that as any leader is going to want for people that are working, kind of with them, not just for them. So just pivoting real quick, and then we'll close out with, I know you've got so much that you're working on, but I'm just curious, like, you've worked with enterprises and giving them, advice, and kind of, on this show, we like to highlight a lot of, technical advancements and, this emergence of AI, ML, and all of these, the issue of job security and a lot of these major enterprises, like with layoffs at Microsoft and Amazon, or or Intel. All of these are kind of happening because of the emergence of AI. So this workplace is kind of becoming a little bit uncertain, and people are not feeling the value that they should be feeling because they're worried that their job is on the line, and in line with what you try to do and making sure that teams stay in sync and kind of creating this harmony and that everyone is a piece of this larger puzzle. What would you say to those leaders in some of these enterprises who are having to deal with talking to their teams about the potential for layoffs, or kind of having to kind of create that space where it seems like there's some security, but there may not be? It's just like, what do you think, and kind of where do you see the future for this heading for these types of team leaders?
Yeah, so let me just preface this with the fact that I've been around for a while, and for 35 years, working for different, research universities, national laboratories, private foundations, country foundations and such, dealing with their research results. And the research results are in all different fields. Well, I gained a real great appreciation in regards to those nascent technologies that ultimately become something in our phone. The GPS, the touch screen, a lot of data components, of course, AI components. A lot of that is coming from research universities and are technologies that I dealt with. Well, I learned that it's really important to move along with technology rather than get scared by it. So I've embraced AI myself, and what I use, AI amplifies, human capability. It doesn't replace the human wisdom, and leaders should focus on the fact that what AI can't do. So it doesn't do cultural intelligence, it doesn't do authentic relationship building, and it doesn't do, the question isn't what will AI replace me, but how can I become more human in an AI world? I think the more human that we become, the better off that we have to make our mark in the world and to counter all these effects of what's going on. And so it's those uniquely human skills that we need to look for. When I use AI for lots of different things, but like I'm looking into, the markets that I'm dealing with, I ask it questions in regards to how does that group feel about certain aspects, and how does my product service solve their problem in their words. So rather than telling people what you do and how you do it, you tell them that how you're solving their problem with this product or device and how to go forward. So this is where AI can help us understand what some of those issues would be and even what other competitors are doing. I know you didn't ask it as a sales question, but I'm just putting it in that perspective because that just came to my mind right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the key. It's finding, I mean, and I'm obviously going to take it in a sales direction, but it is finding where, the pain points are, and addressing those, and just as you alluded to, right? The machines can't take over human interaction. I don't know, Sean. I'm going to end here. I know, John, you've got a couple books coming out, and I wanted to just ask if you wanted to shout anything out, or tell us what leaders can expect from the next book that you've got coming down the pike here.
Sure. So in the end of September, October timeframe, I'm putting out a book called Sync to the Beat of Success: Your Guide to Transformative Tech Leadership. And basically, what this does, it's a practical global playbook for transformative tech leadership. Leaders can expect actionable strategies for aligning their remote teams, building cultural intelligence, and developing this resilience to thrive in uncertainty. There's lots of uncertainty right now. The book brings together real stories, out there in the world, my own experiences, Eastern and Western wisdom, and the Sync framework. It's guiding leaders to inspire, empower, and to create lasting impact, no matter where in the world they are, so that their teams thrive.
Awesome. Well,
Awesome. I'm looking forward to reading it. I'll pick up a copy.
They can find me at mutualprosperity, all one word, .com, or on LinkedIn. I post quite a bit on LinkedIn, and that's John Taylor McEntire.
All right. Thank you, John.
You guys make sure you guys go follow, and I'll definitely also be picking up a copy of that book too, Sean. Looking forward to it. Thank you so much, John. We appreciate it. We appreciate the time, and everyone, until next time, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.